And their mission really is just to help people make clean energy choices where they live. So, and we really try to help all communities, low income, immigrant communities, just everybody. We work with small farms, not so much the large farms. You kind of stay really kind of a local grassroots type organization. We're a partnership. So we're not a nonprofit, not a government agency, we're a partnership. So our funders, our biggest is the Department of Commerce through a CIP program, that's Conservation Improvement Programs that utilities fund into. GPI, the Great Plains Institute, that stands for. The University of Minnesota, the RSDPs, Rural Sustainable Development Partnerships, and some other organizations. We got the Southwest RDC and a few others too. So it's a partnership. So it's kind of a unique entity, and it's been very successful going out. We're in our 20th year right now at CERTs. And what I liked about it most was the fact that it was very action oriented. We're always trying to help people take action. We don't do any legislation, we don't promote any of that kind of stuff. All we do is try to implement good, clean energy work. So, next slide. So, we can go through this one real quick, but yeah, hands-on assistance. So here I am today. I also go out, been to a lot of rural grocery stores, farms, do other speaking presentations like this, take calls, all kinds of different things. A lot of city work. Green Step Cities is a big thing. Practical and education. Next slide. In word of warning, there's a lot of slides, and some of them I'll just be like, let's go. Another thing that I really liked about it, and I've worked a lot with electric cooperatives over the years. What I like about that is how statewide it is. So we're statewide. I'm the West Central region. It's a pretty big region. Doesn't necessarily look like it on the map, but you think of how far you got to go. But Shannon and Melissa are awesome up north. Jason is really dialed in on things in the Southwest. A lot of transmission kind of things down there. We have a brand new person down in Southeast, Diana, with the team in the Metro. There's so many folks there, and Colby in the Northeast. So it's just kind of nice that we have people. Sometimes it seems like it's sort of hard to get resources when you get a little bit outstate. And so we really try to value that, where we try to bring the expertise to where it's needed or wanted. Next slide. All right, so that's enough about CERTs. Any questions about that? Probably not. So now we're going to dig in, get to know your home energy use. And next slide. Next slide. So we're going to do a little trivia. I did like this just to set the table. How much energy consumption takes place in homes in Minnesota? So the total energy used in Minnesota, how much do you think takes place is used in homes versus schools and businesses and agriculture? Do you think it's 1/10, a fifth, or 3/4? All right, next slide. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. So what that kind of means is, as a collective, that's 20% energy use in the state of Minnesota. You as an individual can save on your own bill and whatnot, and as we can collectively save, there is a lot of opportunity for energy savings residentially. Next slide. And this is what it looks like. So this is typical energy use in a home. 800 kilowatt hours per year. Back in the 90s when I was starting, it was kind of 7, 8 cents per kilowatt hour. Now we're like 12, 14 cents a kilowatt hour, which if you think, we are, 25, almost 30 years later. So there is, from an inflation perspective, energy is still pretty cheap. But so you're kind of looking at, a little bit like a little over $100 bill for the typical single family residential home. But what you really want to look at here, and what I think sometimes we get a little bit lost on because we get kind of caught up in, like the devices and all these different things, where the big piece of the pie is heating and cooling. We just got through a really long winter, and there's a lot of energy to be saved there. Air conditioning is a pretty large load, the biggest load, what drives the electric grid in Minnesota. And then from there, there are excellent opportunities in water heating, probably almost more so in how you use it than in the type that you use. Appliances, lighting, and electronics. Those are little smaller slices. So good to kind of just a little bit of a set point where you're like, okay, if I want to save energy, where should I go? There's your map. Next slide. Okay, so I didn't have this in here for the wintertime meetings. This got delayed a couple times, so I'm happy to be here, even though it's a nice day. The IRA, which just sounds funny to me all the time because I think of other things, but it's the Inflation Reduction Act. And that was implemented in the last couple of years, and it's actually being rolled out as we speak. So I think we all kind of are aware, unfortunately, we have experienced quite a bit of inflation in energy bills, grocery bills, every single thing I can think of pretty much. And so this was an act that's implemented that, we'll go to the next slide, is really going to help us quite a bit if you want to take advantage of some resources coming available. So it consists of tax credits. You'll see up ahead here, there'll be some rebates. There's a lot to do with something called electrification and changing kind of our habits of how we use energy. So if you look here, there's a maximum annual cap of $3,200 a year. What's kind of cool is that a lot of the energy credits that are out there now are lifetime caps. So this is a $3,200 annual cap, and it's a 10-year, this is a 10-year program. So depending on how you utilize it, you can kind of stagger kind of your needs and whatnot. Up to 30% tax credit, help you pay with an energy audit. Great place to start so you kind of understand what you might need to do. Lots for insulation, $1,200. I mean, it used to be like $150, so it's huge. Heating systems, heat pumps are big, yes.
Is there some place that you can get this on the internet or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah, please don't write on this. Everything you can pretty much find on our website. It's like Clean Energy Resource Teams, CERTs.org. I think it'll be up in one of the future slides, but yeah, so everything is definitely online. I've got cards here, so we are always here to help with folks. And but bottom line, these are some big dollars. I am happy to take questions now or later on heat pumps, because that is kind of an evolving, well, it's a current technology, but it's sort of being, it's getting more popular right now, and it's pretty useful technology. There's some for windows and doors and appliances. I actually have this little electric range called an induction range, and it's a pretty amazing little piece of technology. So, but I bought it before the tax credit, darn it. So yeah, and then there's that heat pump water heater, which that one kind of took me for a surprise. $2,000 is a lot for a heat pump water heater, and those are pretty neat pieces of equipment too. Next slide.
What is a heat pump water heater?
Okay, so first of all, let me just tell you what a heat pump is. A heat pump, your refrigerator is a heat pump. Your air conditioner is a heat pump. A dehumidifier is actually a heat pump too, but just set up a little differently. It's the refrigeration cycle. Your air conditioner doesn't make your air cold. It removes heat from your house and rejects it outside. So you got that little A coil sitting on top of your furnace, assuming, a lot of folks these days do have a forced air furnace, maybe central air conditioning, and it's fairly predominant. That coil absorbs heat from your home with the air flowing past it. The refrigeration cycle absorbs that at a quite high rate, and then rejects it outside at that central unit, those larger units that you see outside of your home. A heat pump, the only difference, it's the exact same system, except for it has a reversing valve and is set up where it can change directions. Your air conditioner, your refrigerator, air conditioner, car can only go in one direction. A heat pump can go in reverse. So it's pretty cool that so we talk a lot about air source heat pumps. And air source heat pumps are just like your central air conditioner. And so that big unit now is absorbing heat, literally down to, and they can run down to 0 degrees, very effectively down to 10 to 15, and incredibly high efficiencies doing that. So that's very cool. Now the heat pump water heater is what you asked about, is just that. What I kind of like about it and what's sort of kind of luring me in a little bit is there's a lot of, it's kind of like having a dehumidifier sitting on top of your water heater. And so it is circulating air, taking the heat out of the air in your well, you know, I'm speaking about basements because I think a lot of water heaters are in folks' basements. And it is taking heat out of that air. So there is kind of this little bit of a play where we're kind of like, okay, balancing the energy savings and maybe cooling off the basement a little bit. But in summer months in particular, I kind of like the dehumidification aspect of it. And so what you're getting in electric resistance water heater, those electric elements are 99% efficient. You put a kilowatt worth of energy into it, you get a kilowatt worth of electric heat out of it. You know, minus just a little bit of loss here and there. And maybe some tank loss too, but really that's 99%. Now the heat pump water heater, you put 1 kilowatt hours worth of electrical energy into it, you get 2.5 to 3 kilowatt hours of heat energy out. So that's what's so cool about heat pumps as we kind of move forward. And that's a water heater application, it's your air conditioner application, you know, it's going to be for pools. I mean, you can use it in all kinds of ways. The air source one is really big. The water heater one is it's the only Energy Star rated electric water heater you can get as a heat pump water heater. There are no electric water heaters that are heat pump or electric resistance. So you're gonna be hearing more and more about that, especially as this IRA takes hold and people start going, I should grab hold of this money. Did that help? Any other questions on that? Okay. Yeah, and then so, you know, so a lot of that tax credit, you know, if you make, you know, good enough money and you have that tax appetite, then that's a great way to, you know, take advantage of that incentive. Not everybody is in that position. So this is kind of nice where they actually are putting it into a rebate form. So if you are of lower income or moderate income, you know, have a family, it's all those kind of, we'll have to figure some of those things out. I don't have the details on that. I don't even think the government has it perfect yet. But yeah, so it's going to come in rebate form too, so that's kind of nice. And we'll know more as we go. Next slide.
What's the timing for as we go?
Yeah, right here. So coming, I mean, it's basically, it should be now, but I mean, it's kind of the way things go. They kind of figure, you know, they make the legislation and then they tell people to go figure out how to implement it, and that's kind of where we're at. I actually kicked myself a little. I did a lot of energy work last year knowing this was coming, but I had my own reasons for doing it. That electric load service upgrade, 4,000, like for people that want to start putting, you know, charging in their garage for an EV, you know, heat pump type things, it's solar, all those kind of things. I mean, I think you can get up to like $14,000, so I'm just kind of like, wow, that's, when the housing crashed in 07, 08, they had a Recovery Act then, and a lot of that money went towards utilities and the smart grid. That's kind of like two-way metering. All the wind turbines we see now, a lot of that came because heavily incentivized to kind of push, basically, you know, some government money to push that market that way. And now, when I was at Moorhead Public Service, we figured the energy coming out of that wind turbine was about 16 to 18 cents per kilowatt hour. And Moorhead Public Service's rate was 8 cents a kilowatt hour. Those large wind turbines that you see out there now, the average cost coming out of there is 2.2 cents per kilowatt hour. It's cheaper than nuclear, it's cheaper than coal, it's cheaper than everything. Now it's energy with some capacity, but as we all know, it's really windy today, but it won't be next week, and so on and so forth. So there's always a balance, but it's pretty good stuff. Next slide too, by the way. Yes.
So when it's so windy for these couple of days, does it store up extra energy because it's so extra windy now?
Yeah, so I mean, there is kind of that, it probably has changed. You know, I don't know specifically, the turbines have gotten so big. It was 150 kW that we did at Moorhead. Then they did a bunch of 225s. Then they go to 1 megawatt, which is 1,000 kilowatts. You know, so it's a lot. Now they're up to 2.5, 3. I would be safe to say, like, once you go over 35 miles an hour, then some of the turbines start to turn out of the wind. So they're like, oh, it's too windy, too gusty. So you do run into, you know, too windy is not good, but they run pretty darn well, and they've done a cool job of, they gear them differently now, so you kind of notice, you know, they rotate seemingly a little slower. They're gigantic, so they calculate it based on the tip speed of the propeller there, the blade, but.
Storage, essentially? Your question was, you know, if it's windy today, you know, do we have energy from that for tomorrow type of deal? So that would be energy storage, essentially?
Yeah, so I didn't take it in that direction, but energy storage is definitely a big piece of the pie right now. One thing that I think is a little bit overlooked is the simple fact that as we diversify those resources, we've got wind now going in South Dakota. We got wind, and this is pretty recent. South Dakota is very recent. North Dakota was just like 10 years ago, and Minnesota was, you know, kind of the 15 to 20. So if it's windy here, windy there, there's a marketplace out there that helps dictate where energy goes through something called nodes. But electrons travel at the speed of light. And so, you know, if you have the transmission, which is also a big factor, getting wires from where the wind is to where the people are is a big thing. We've gone a long ways, and they're kind of ramping up another 2040 plan for that. And then also, to the energy storage point, looking to batteries. I love pumped hydro, but I never hear much about it. You know, so there's lots of different ways to do it, but balancing the grid is a big piece. And that's just something that will be kind of evolving as you add load and add supply, is what I should say. Any other questions kind of on those bigger picture kind of things? So, all right, let's dig in a little bit. So just real quick, utility bill, what's on it? So it is good to understand your utility bill, and a lot of times people don't really have, you know, we all just kind of pay the bill. It's what's my bill? It's $100, but you probably maybe don't know, you know, how many kilowatt hours you're using, and you might not really know exactly what a kilowatt hour is and how much energy is in that. And you don't have to know all that, but it's good to have at least a baseline. And for one, the service charge is just typically, you know, it used to be a lot of 10 to 15, but you're seeing a lot of $20 to $25. Sometimes at cooperatives, it can be a little higher because they don't always have, maybe if they have a lot of seasonal customers and whatnot, they'll have a high fixed charge to try to help pay for the wires and not so much the energy. They're kind of a balancing act the way utilities do it. So it's good to be aware of what that is because it does kind of impact your energy charge, essentially, if you divide it all out. Residentially, we all get charged by the kilowatt hour. Some utilities do a good job of having like off-peak rates, like using it at night. You could have a separate meter, or you could get a credit on your bill for air conditioning, which I think is a really cool program for some pretty neat reasons. But essentially, if you have, say, 1,000-watt space heater, which is a typical space heater, and you ran that for an hour, that's 1 kilowatt hour, and it would cost you 15 cents. Your refrigerator, you know, they're cycling on and off, but they're very efficient actually. So they're gonna, you know, use just a few pennies an hour, really, so they don't use very much. An LED light bulb, say like that 60-watt incandescent, now you have a 10-watt, run that for 100 hours, and that's your 15 cents. So it's just kind of all that sort of simple math that all these little things that are happening in your house, but the big ones are an air conditioner, your furnace fan, a dehumidifier in the basement, those kind of things really make a big impact. Charging your phone, not so much big deal. Sometimes those cable boxes are a little bit pesky. They produce a lot of heat, which is a lot of energy. So there's different places to look. And then there's riders. So you'll have like a 12-cent, maybe go next slide too, actually, on this one. Yeah, there's way too much detail on there. It's too far away. But there's a lot of riders. Like you see this a lot on the gas bill. The natural gas bill has transportation fee, an environmental fee. There's this fee. So once you add them all up, you could have like 50-cent gas, but really it's 85 cents once it's all done. And that has been a big one. So during COVID, natural gas was like at 50 cents a therm. That's 100,000 BTUs. I know, whatever. But that's what they were charging it, and we're over $1. So I mean, that was a doubling. And there was a time earlier in my career that it went like $1.10 or something like that, but that was kind of an aberration. So it'll be interesting to see how things shake up. But so energy prices are up. Electric is actually kind of nice. It is up, but where gas can go up and down, literally on a month-to-month basis, electric, sometimes they'll have winter and summer rates, but generally the increases are much more like a 2%. Sometimes you hear a little bit more like a 5%, but it's much more kind of a stable environment. Generally regulated by the Public Utilities Commission. Next slide. Okay. Sometimes I can talk too much. Okay, yep, so a kW is the power. That's that 1,000-watt space heater. 1,000 watts, that's how much power you have. You run it for an hour, that's a kilowatt hour, 1,000 watts over 1 hour. That's the 15 cents. So when I started out, I bought a house, rented, put a guy in the basement. He thought it was cold, plugged in the space heater, and that thing just ran and ran and ran. It was like $80 a month. So I mean, time, and I'm going to show this, hopefully it's coming up pretty quick, is a huge piece. So I think we can go next slide, unless if anybody wants to know more about that. A little bit, I think we've already talked enough about this, unless if anybody has a question. Next slide. My time piece is coming up. So this is kind of nice. So almost all the electric utilities now have like a My Meter type program, or they can have a lot of different names for it, like everything these days. But essentially, I mentioned something earlier called smart grid. And meters used to always be just a one-way. So it would count your electricity, and a meter person would come along and read that meter, and then they would charge it. And that was it. And then they started to be able to send like that number over the wire. Sometimes they could do that. Well, now meters can talk two ways. They're a two-way communication. And to be honest, we have not really done a lot with that. There's kind of cool things that can be done, but that's still down the pike. But one thing that has been done is you can pretty much go online at vast majority of utilities. There's probably a few that don't have it, but most do. Co-ops, IOUs. I'm not totally sure. Munis that have it, but it's hard to say. There's a lot of utilities in Minnesota. But you can kind of see these spikes. And if you're I've taken a lot of high energy bill calls, especially early in the career. You're like, what the heck happened there? Christmas lights used to be a big driver, believe it or not. Not so much. The LEDs actually make a big difference. LEDs are huge energy savers. But you see the air conditioning bump there, in the middle. What was this? Oh, okay, furnace went out and they used a space heater. Yeah, electric heating, unless if you're on an off-peak rate or something like that, electric resistance heating in Minnesota with the way the rates are, unless if you're taking advantage of utility programs, is a whopper. And actually that would be true anyway because it's energy, not necessarily costs. But yeah, there's the holiday lights, and then so an electric vehicle, you could kind of think of that, and actually this graph probably shows it a little bit more. I would mostly kind of compare it to like having, driving around town for the cost of your air conditioner. So that's kind of one way of looking at it. I mean, that's rounding it off, of course, but that's just a sample of what that can look like. And this is available to you through your electric utility, most likely if you're signed up for that. So, or you could get signed up. Next slide. Same thing. Next slide. Okay, real quick. For those of you that yesterday was the final day for the cold weather rule. So we're May 2nd, May 1st, the cold weather rule ended. So that's for folks that kind of have a hard time paying for their utilities. The state of Minnesota won't allow utilities to shut off people's heat in the wintertime, and that's probably a good thing. It is a good thing. I'll just go that say it. But, you know, the bills do come due, and so on May 1st, that program ends. EAP, you guys know what that stands for? Next slide. Energy Assistance Program. We can go to the next slide. Basically, like I said, cold weather ended yesterday. If you know somebody in that position, the next slide will have, well, actually, no, it's on the slide. Right here. Right in Wright County, we're kind of right on the edge, right? I'm Wright and Meeker. Wright County Community Action, they serve a little bit wider area, but they can help you with your bills. And then, oh, I said that a little bit wrong. So Wright County is right here. And then United Cap is over in Meeker and a little bit beyond. And so those are people that can help you with a lot of things, with energy audits, helping with bill pay, all kinds of, they're really great organizations. We work with them a lot. Any questions here about that? All right, next slide. And then just so you know too, that the Minnesota law requires landlords they have to supply good heating systems. So sometimes we've had problems in that area. Next slide. So check your utilities. They've always got the best rebates, things of that nature. Next slide. All right, so now I'm hoping so now we'll get really into the weeds. Hopefully you guys maybe have some specific questions about your own home. But I'm going to show you a little bit about my house. Next slide. And I've been alluding to this, but I love putting this up here because how you save any energy, whether it's gas or electric, this is a little bit more electric focused as a representation, but you can reduce your power. You can get a refrigerator that has a lower kW amount, maybe operates more efficiently, or you can reduce your time, and that's a big one. You know, if you have things that you know are running a lot, look there first to try to either reduce the time through maybe motion sensors or time clocks or just simply turning off the lights, things of that nature. But time is a big one. And that's all it is, kilowatt hours. kW times hours is kilowatt hours. Does anybody know what the 8,760 number is? That's how many hours there are in a year. So that is a giant multiplier. And people leave stuff on, and it just kind of adds up and adds up and adds up. You know, you can talk, 60-watt light bulb and all that, but if you are leaving things on, and big thing, so dehumidifiers in the basement, those old brown ones, anybody remember those kind of old black and brown dehumidifiers? I mean, those things just run and run and run, and people call in and they go, why is my bill so high? And you kind of go through this checklist, and it's like, oh yeah, and you just never think of that. So kind of trying to find those things that you never think of. And maybe it's an insulation or something where they got that hole in the insulation, that leaky window or whatever, that's just a sieve hour after hour. So that's big. And then the other one would be furnace fan, especially with new construction. The new houses, they're built so tight. The builders tell them, and it's a good thing, to run your furnace fan. They're still drying out sheetrock, all those kind of things. They want, everything is mechanically ventilated. People are like, oh my gosh, I have a $300 electric bill. That's because the fan is running, and you have that multiplier, 8,760. There's different strategies to kind of get away from that. So look for that in your own homes. And that doesn't cost you really anything. It's just looking for that. It doesn't cost you anything. And you can save as much or more energy doing things like that than investing in wildly expensive technology. Next slide. We'll go quick, but I think we all probably know that LEDs are the most energy efficient. Are you guys liking the LEDs? So for the most part, maybe? So I always remember CFLs, and I still don't mind my CFLs. I like them. But there's a lot of backlash on those. The LEDs have been a bit more popular, I think.
This is all LEDs right here.
Nice.
Those are all LEDs.
Yeah. And you probably had a demand charge here. Did you notice maybe a bit of a lower demand with your lighting? So,
Yeah.
because you probably that could have been 100, 150 watt, now it's probably 20. And then multiply by all this. And the thing with a church is they don't have any hours. But these guys, unfortunately, probably have to pay a demand charge. Is that right? Do you know about that? And then they get kind of a wallop for Sunday. You know, you don't have a lot of hours. But so LEDs are great. Next slide. So they do it all. They have no mercury. CFLs had a tiny bit of mercury in them. They last forever. CFLs lasted 3,000 hours. LEDs last 20,000 hours. Sometimes I don't feel like they always do, but and they're incredibly efficient. One thing to know about LEDs, a couple things. One thing they never tell you too much about, they don't use a lot of energy, so they don't generate a lot of heat. But the heat they do generate is on the back side in the solid state. They're a solid state component in there that lights up the LED, light emitting diode. And that gets hot. And so that really needs to get cooled. They're all designed, to have air moving by them to cool off that little electrical circuit. And so they're not really supposed to be in enclosed fixtures. So you can put them in there, but it's going to shorten the life significantly. So that's just something to kind of be aware of with LEDs. Next slide. This is just kind of nice to look at, and I leave it in here. I sort of think it's old hat, but that's kind of me too, right? But I go into, the big box store or hardware store. There's a lot of light bulbs now. So if you guys have questions about light bulbs, feel free to ask. But I think there's a couple of key things. For one, you kind of see the lumens, everything. We sort of in our minds, and this isn't going to last forever. I have kids. They don't think the any way we do. They don't do it incandescent, so they're not going to know about a 60-watt bulb. We do, I think, but that will change. Lumens is the amount of light. That's a measurement of light. 800 lumens for a 60-watt incandescent. This CFL was 13 to 16, and now the LED is 8 to 13. So you can see we made a huge jump from incandescent to CFL. The CFLs are good on the energy basis. And now we made another nice jump to the LEDs and some other added benefits for sure. So that's how that looks. Next slide. This is one piece that I think the two big things were make sure that they can stay cool, because that'll keep the life long. And then this one, I don't know, this is sort of a personal one for me. And it's a personal one for anyone. So my opinion is my opinion. But that number on the far end, that's 2,700 Kelvin. I don't know. Probably not many of us have ever heard of that before in lighting. Show of hands if you knew what 2,700 Kelvin means. A little bit, yeah. Exactly. And that's totally fine, and none of us should have to ever worry about this. But now when you go into the store and have to pick through all these things, 2,700 Kelvin is the color of your incandescent light bulb. It's a warm color. We're pretty warm in here still. So I feel like you probably have 2,700 Kelvin. You might have 3,000. Do you have any idea? Probably not. No. Correct. But you could get a lighting vendor in here that puts in 5,000. And I swear an LED at 5,000, you might as well be 6,500. LED is a white light. It was very hard to develop LED lighting technology. They literally had a contest for millions of dollars to develop the LED incandescent equivalent bulb. I mean, it was very hard to do. People much smarter than me did it. But they had to take a very white light and make it, it's very nice in here. This is perfectly lit church, I would say. So yeah, for the most part, I would stay away. When you see that 5,000, you're gonna go home and you're like, ah! Sometimes in the bathroom, maybe, it's kind of the doctor's office kind of stuff. But, it's kind of, you buy something for $4 or $6, and you're like, ah. So that's something to be aware of. I would stick to 2,700, 3,000 at the most. I never go over that. Yes.
What about these Phillips
Yeah. Well, traditionally, it was fluorescent tubes. So I started out, it was T12. They were an inch around. Then they went to T8, and they're 3/4 an inch. And they dropped 30% energy use. Now they're making those, because we're creatures of habit, they have made LED tubes for no other reason that we all have. There's a lot of fixtures out there like that. We're used to it. We wanted an incandescent bulb, an LED bulb to look like an incandescent bulb. We wanted an LED tube to look like a fluorescent tube. They have them. And so again, it's sort of like that previous slide. Your T8 is actually pretty darn efficient, the 3/4 inch fluorescent tube, but the LED is better, will last longer. And you also just want to make sure that you have you get sort of a wide beam on it. You'll see LED is a directional light. You ever have an LED flashlight? Those things are awesome. You know, I mean, it just, you take your old flashlight compared to a LED, and I mean, it's just amazing. But that light goes right forward. You see the LEDs in the cars, and you notice, like, as they're driving around, it almost like has a cutoff. So you just want to look for good disbursement, but for the most part, you're doing good. Was that okay? That probably wasn't the best, maybe. Did I answer your question? They have LEDs. It's cheaper, lasts longer. Absolutely go for it. They're not too expensive anymore. Yeah. So, yeah. Commercially, you'll find like kind of some variations, but anything you get at the kind of the big box store, you should be good to go. So, next slide. So we got a lot of explanation for you with a bright light guide. Next slide. So definitely the big thing, just kind of get to know your heating system, know how to operate it. Know, do you have a boiler? Do you have a forced air? Kind of know what you have, and that will kind of sort of put you in the direction of the right opportunities. Next slide. So this is a picture of my house. In the basement, I have a 1950 Cape Cod home that had an addition in the one end of a family room that kind of went off the back, and then a master bedroom off the other side. So people that anybody here live in a split entry house? Used to? Yeah. Pretty hard to, the basement, kind of heat and cool, sort of balance. I have this up here for a couple of reasons. A lot of it's about distribution. So these ducts used to be half the size. Now I'm kind of an energy nerd and been dad's a tinner and all that stuff. So I knew what to ask for, and then it's not so expensive and hard to do, but that's a hard thing. But if you have a cold room and you can't figure it out, I'm a source to kind of maybe help navigate some of that stuff. So literally put in, this is actually a return air here, which was a disgrace before. And a perfectly good HVAC company put it in, I guess. And then we added this. Oh, and right here. So I wanted to show you this. This is a damper. You guys all have forced air systems here? Okay, we got one boiler probably. You guys forced air? Yeah, anybody ever adjusted a damper on their ductwork? So they almost all have them, but most people don't know where they are, or they don't know what it is. And this is kind of far away, but it's just a little metal handle, and the handle aligns with a piece of sheet metal that's inside. And then you can open it or shut it or anywhere in between to try to balance the airflow. And in a split entry house, in the heating season, you want to push as much heat down as you can in the winter, and then in the cooling, you want to push as much up as you can. And I put like a summer-winter spot because you kind of can tweak. But man, it's pretty big, and it's kind of hard to talk about. I also finding the holes, just kind of seal this in. I love spray foam and insulation. It's super cheap. Those little Tough Stuff cans or whatever. That's super easy. Next slide. Here's a better picture of the damper. So this is basically, my furnace is right here. It goes up, over, and then there's the damper. And I've got that wide open because I'm trying to heat that room, and I'm like, all the air over there. But I guess I probably should have taken a picture to the other direction. I've got it trimmed down. So you're kind of playing with that stuff. So if anybody had any kind of cold room, issues, we could talk about it, but it sounds like we're okay. Next slide.
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't know if you're going to talk about mini splits, but what is a mini split and when would you use it?
Yeah, so now you have a boiler. So if you have hot water heat, you don't have ductwork, for most likely, more than likely. And so then you're probably using like a window air conditioner, and those are fine, but they're clunky and maybe annoying or whatever, and they're reasonably efficient, but not that great. The mini split systems, and they also have mini split air source heat pumps, are a great alternative to like a window unit where you can get more cooling. They're incredibly high efficient. Their efficiencies are absurd. They're like 20 SEER rating. And so they're very good when you don't have ductwork. And some people would even probably get you with ductwork, but I would never. It's better to have, it's nice to have. If you got ductwork, use your ductwork. So not everybody's going to tell you that, but it's the way to go. All right, and then just real quick here, any other, and we can dig into some of that stuff more too later if we like, but so I still have an atmospheric, this is a pretty old water heater, it keeps chugging along. I do have an insulating jacket on here, just extra insulation wrapped around the tank. You want it kind of free on the top and the bottom, just for any potential moisture. But, this is a probably 5 energy factor, 0.55 energy factor water heater. If you got a water heater that had these white pipes, the sealed combustion, what's kind of cool with all that happened, that water heater, it heats, flames into the tank, you use your hot water, all that fun stuff, and then all the hot exhaust gases goes up the chimney. That's what happens. When you have the high efficiency stuff, this is my new furnace. It's a high efficiency one. There's a picture coming up later. All that does is it actually takes the heat out of the exhaust. So that's how that and then you go from essentially an 80% efficiency burner up to all the way up to the 98% efficiency. It's amazing how good folks get. So that's kind of what you're getting when you're getting a sealed combustion high efficiency furnace or water heater. I am definitely kind of thinking about going the heat pump water heater route. So when that IRA kicks in, and that's a pretty big tax credit. And I run a dehumidifier, an Energy Star dehumidifier in my basement because it's not really finished, but like any other basement, it's cool, it can be damp. I got stuff down there, so I use it. Next slide. This is awesome. So if you have, this is the rim joist, the basement, spray foam. Super. What I love about spray foam too is it eliminates the possibility for mistakes. You put insulation in, you put some plastic on there, all that kind of stuff, but did you do it perfect? You can't. I mean, you do it really well. You do as best as you can, but you always have a leak. Spray foam, boom. And so every one of my rim joists are like that, and it makes a big difference. So there. And then I am negligent. I took out an exhaust fan here, and I need to fill that. So these are all annoying projects that we just have to get to, right? So I left it, and I could have cut it out, but I left it. Next slide. So anybody on Excel Energy and CenterPoint Energy, run out and get the home energy squad to your house. I brought them into my house because I'm an energy nerd, and I wanted to see how good they were. I want to see if they did a good job. They did a really good job. This is an infrared scan. So they put a fan on my front door, and what did they do that day? They sucked, I'm just going to say they sucked the air out of the house. Yeah, they did. They depressurized my house to basically expose all the air leaks. And then they took an infrared camera, which shows heat, and they went through my house, and I told you that old 1951 Cape Cod. This is one of those built-in dressers here. Look at, that's cold right there. This is more interior, just fine. The wall is doing good. Cold, just spilling up here, spilling out there. So I went and I took spray foam and I don't have a new picture, but How awesome is that? It shows you exactly what you need to do. Next slide. So, old house, embarrassing little attic hatch. But look at that attic hatch. So, get the seal, put insulation on the top of it, and weather stripping around the edges. You know, you're good to go. Simple. But remember, all year long, you know, couple thousand hours of heating year, just leak. So it just adds up. Knee wall. That's kind of, you know, those 1.5 stories. They got a knee wall, so just right in here. You never want to crawl in there, especially on a hot summer day. But yeah, so get that door sweep going. Boom. Here's this is that room of mine. It's all cedar, which the wife is not thrilled about, but you know, whatever. So yeah, acrylic caulk right in here. I still haven't done it. Sorry. Next slide. Same thing. So I actually got rid of some cedar for my wife. There's a fireplace right here. She wanted to kind of brighten up the place, so I got rid of this. This whole beam, you know, this is me, kind of Mr. Fix-It. Pulled all that off, spray foamed the heck out behind here. I couldn't believe there was a mouse hole like this. I was horrified. Sorry, I admit it. But now it's gone, and life is so much better. I won't get into it. But anyway, so this is Home Energy Squad. This cost me like $80. So it was just like, that's the best thing. I've done these actually before, but I don't have the tools now. And like I said, I wanted to see how good they were. They did a great job. This is the chimney. Next slide. There's Ajax. There's our dog. Infrared works on everything. I don't know if he's a very nice dog. He kind of looks devilish there with those eyes. But that's Ajax. So next slide. And there's my house. So yeah, 1951, Cape Cod. The addition's kind of back over here, and I got a little one over here. So I got this kind of it's obviously not that big of a house, but it kind of is a little bit longer than they ever expected when they originally put the heating system in. And then everything is on the floor too. So my supplies are on the floor, and my returns are on the floor, and so I tried to make some tweaks. Those are hard things to do, but excellent on the website. Please take advantage. Can't believe it. My neighbor just moved in. They got ice dams this year. I was like, no. They got a much nicer house than I do. And they're super nice. They got ice dams. That's heat loss. So all of these lights up here, those are if that's going into an attic space, you know, air bypass. If they're not sealed well, that's how you get ice dams in your residential home. And a tool like that can help take you so far to solving those problems. Kind of point you right where you need to go. Any questions on that? I just wanted to give them a really big plug. I thought it was perfect for this meeting. Next slide. And then, so know your system. You got a cottonwood. Make sure your air conditioner, this is your heat pump, this is your central air conditioner. Keep that thing clean. This is not mine, but mine does get dirty, and I do have to clean it. And all you have to do here is take a garden hose. They're aluminum fins. Aluminum is not the hardest metal ever. It's a good conductor. That's why they used it, and relatively cheap. So take some water and just kind of spray it down. Take a brush, take a broom, lightly, you know. You don't want to hack at it because you don't want to bend all the fins. You know, you're not going to, you know, whatever. Just, you know, be gentle. And once or twice a year, the cottonwood's the worst. And then here's so this is outside, now here's inside. That furnace filter, keep an eye on them, that you forget about them, I forget about them. If you have pets, you know, a shedding dog, cat, get that thing changed. You know, you can go, from an allergy perspective, it's kind of a personal choice. Biggest thing, keep it clean, keep it changed. 3-4 times a year, most likely good. A lot of pets, maybe a little bit more. Next slide.
Can we talk about those furnace filters?
Sure.
I hear controversy on just buy the cheap ones, but change them often, and don't worry about getting the expensive ones. Any thoughts?
I'm mostly on board except for the cheap ones. I'm not real big into the washable filters, only because, and this is a personal preference, I feel like too much debris can get through that. They're all kind of on like a micron basis or whatever, and I'm not super well versed in that necessarily. But you can tell with those washables, and they say, you know, they allow the most amount of particle through. So I like to get the lowest cost pleated filter. So, and I did get a new furnace this year because my other one was 30 years old and we needed to do some of that distribution stuff. I was in that room when we bought the house. We went sweater and a blanket. That room, it was like, oh my God. And then I re-insulated a wall. I did some stuff. We went to sweater, and now we're just normal. You just kind of have to, you know, one step at a time, stuff like that. But yeah, pleated filter, I would go pleated and low cost pleated. Unless if you have allergies, then do whatever you got to do. So.
When you buy the pleated filters,
Yes.
they come with numbers they come with numbers on them, on the pleated filters.
Yes.
Anywhere from 8 up to 15.
Yeah.
I was told by an HVAC person, they never like to put anything higher than a 9, because the higher you go, the more restriction it causes in your furnace.
Yeah, it's a real thing. So having a dirty filter starves your furnace of air. Having, you know, a really high efficient furnace filter does reduce airflow. I can snap a lot of things off the top of my head. I don't disagree with that statement. I don't go for the highest filter because we don't have allergy issues. Let good airflow through your house. So he is, you know, he's on to something there. You know, go, you know, on the record that filter will not work. You know, it probably is within the spec. Matter of fact, so the new furnace that I got has the ECM motor, which is very high efficient. You can run at a couple speeds and all that kind of stuff. It came with one of those pretty high efficient. The filter was about this thick, you know, and it was it was about 4 inches thick. And I was like, I'm probably not going to stick with that. You know, I did use it for the period of time and whatnot, but kind of went back to my other one, and everything's fine. And you don't notice, but it would restrict airflow a little bit. So he's not wrong. So I'll be really quick on this. Any thermostat, so you want to go from an 80% furnace to a 90% furnace, that saves how much? 10%. If you set back your thermostat 1 degree for 8 hours every night, if you set it back, you save 1% for every 1 degree Fahrenheit you set back for 8 hours. So if you set your thermostat back for 10 degrees every night, you will save 10%. So you can go out and buy a brand new furnace and save 10%, or you can set back your thermostat. I mean, I think it's kind of pretty cool, because anybody can do that. And you can do it by yourself every night. You got to remember, it doesn't save more if you program it. I program mine because I would forget. And then I have had a smart thermostat for a little while. I got rid of it only because I went to 2-stage. I kind of wanted to keep it, but I didn't have a 2-stage smart thermostat, so I just went with programmable. So yeah, there's just so many little details, devil in the details. But smart's cool because you can, you know, if you're up north or you're traveling, you come home, you want to turn the air conditioner on so the house is cool a few hours before you get there. It's those kind of things that are nice. And I did like, I am not a big get into my house electronic kind of guy, but they do detect motion in the house, and I think cell phone location. So they actually do set back your thermostat, like when they know if you're gone, and if they know if you're sleeping and stuff. And it worked. So I was kind of like, oh, that's kind of cool. But it's more cool than, I mean, it saves a little more, but choice. Next slide. Same kind of thing. Yeah, that 1%, 1 degree, 1%, save 10%. Please, I mean, the time is the big one. That thermostat is a big one. Clean those furnace filters, a big one. Furnace fan running all the time, big one. My mother-in-law loves the window curtain thing. I'm really bad at that, but it is a thing. Next slide. Anything up here? So yeah, just more trying to, I really bragged up spray foam, love it. That little draft snake, that's kind of like a heavy towel that you can put, at the door. Same thing as a sweep, things like that, but it's sort of something you can move around. So the plastic also is huge. And I'll just say real quick on windows. Sometimes you do need windows, but really never will you need windows to save energy. Unless if they're in real bad shape, single pane, lots of leaks, stuff like that. Windows are pretty expensive. So you're mostly, there's very few times when you're going to save on that. And the plastic or a wood storm, like a storm window, if you need to reglaze or weather strip, do that. They perform very well. The old single pane window with a wood storm that's sealed up nice, nothing's fancy, just regular, is about 2.5 R value. That's an insulation value, just 2.5, that's just the number. It's not high, but if you go out and buy brand new, very nice windows, which they will be, you'll go to like 3.5. Your wall is likely 12 at a minimum and 18 more than likely. So, you're not, the energy savings potential, and what I think is funny, so they do in U value is they rate windows in U value, which is, to me, a little more confusing than R value. It's not so additive. But do you know what the U value is? 1 divided by R. It's just like, that's what it is. So, I don't know. Is this on the internet? Next slide. Space heaters, I think I talked enough about those. They're nice. If you got a cold spot, you're watching the movie or whatever, that's fine. Turn it off when you're done. Paul Harvey did not do a good job selling. He did a great job selling space heaters, but they are an expensive way to heat your home. Just a nice little spot in the area for a short time. Next. Energy Star. Go get Energy Star. Next slide. So I think some of these aren't as exciting. We are I've talked for an hour. I don't know how you guys are doing. I'm fine. I'm happy to keep going. This is about air conditioning. I got a new air conditioner this year. Kind of did want to go heat pump, kicking myself a little, but I had distribution issues. There were bigger fish to fry, and I had the guy that would do all the work that I want him to do, but he wasn't into heat pumps, and so I didn't do it. But what are you gonna do? My old air conditioner was an 8 SEER, and the new one is a 16. I got incredibly more efficient. It's whisper quiet. They just started it up the other day. Spring startup kind of deal. So that's kind of your minimum efficiency, so anything you get new now is very good. And then really the thought will be, do I want a heat pump or not moving forward? And I got a little ahead of myself, but what are you going to do? And I'm on a co-op too, so I can get a rate. All right, I won't beat myself up anymore. Any questions about air conditioners? This is a little bit about windows. There's the mini splits. Again, refrigeration. The mini splits are incredibly, go 20 SEER and higher. Very efficient and no-brainer because there's almost a no-cost differential to get a heat pump one. Next slide. Then the ceiling fan. Ceiling fan's using like 20 watts. So if you're feeling good, getting a little cool breeze, it's a lot better than your 2,000 watt central air conditioner. So it's about a central air conditioner, a 2-ton, 12 SEER, 2,000 watts. Fan, 20, 30 watt, whatever, kind of miscellaneous, not a lot of watts. Ceiling fan, or, a lot of people like to sleep with the fan, the noise, all that stuff. It's a great way of evaporative cooling, whatever. It's good stuff. Saves a bunch. I didn't run my air conditioner a lot. Now I got this high efficient one, I wonder what I'll do. We'll see, first year. Next slide. And then I talked to you already about air sealing. This is a great little example. Oh, and if you are wanting, this is an awesome book. It's the Department of Commerce Home Energy Guide, and it does like the best job of showing like every scenario that you could have in your house and how to insulate it. And it is somewhat important because we have a pretty strong energy code in Minnesota, and when you get a really tight house, you start to deal with moisture. And this is going to tell you exactly how to do it to prevent any moisture issues. You think of we're not warm enough, but this was full of ice out on the patio, you would have water here. That's what happens in your house when you don't apply insulation with vapor barrier correctly. Yes?
Are you familiar with hemp wool, or have you worked with anybody with hemp wool?
I've definitely, I've heard of it, or whatever, I'm familiar. I don't know what the R value is. I don't know.
Measured differently, and it does not hold on to moisture.
Okay. Now, I do know, so wool socks, they're very good at moisture wicking and whatnot. So I don't know enough about hemp, but merino wool, it does a great job of that. So I kind of think that maybe they're onto something. Now, but if you say that they measure different on an insulation value, then that's not true, because this has an R value, this has an R value, everything has an R value.
The government looks at it differently.
Sure, it still has one. And it might be really good. I don't know what it is per inch, but literally you can almost look up anything and find out what the R value per inch. And it all is additive. So you have the plaster wall here has an R value, plus the wood, plus if there's insulation in there, probably not too much here, plus the brick. Those infrared cameras, they're so good, they can see the nail in the stud. So that's they're good. So not to go back to that, but that's because the nail has it's conducting heat through metal that the wood doesn't, and wood is not as good of an R value as insulation, like fiberglass insulation. And probably, I bet you, hemp wool probably has a decent R value. Trapping air is how you increase insulation, by trapping air. So if hemp wool can trap air, then it can insulate. So, next slide. Lots of insulation. Blown-in cellulose, awesome. Eliminate the leaks. That's what I like about it. Human air, kind of gone. Next slide. So, very good insulation. And this isn't even a knock. I shouldn't knock it, but there's just all those opportunities for leaks. And that's just me talking. Insulators are very good. You get a good contractor that puts up the plastic vapor barrier, all the tape. Good stuff. So it's absolutely good, and usually a little cheaper, and should be just fine. Next slide. Windows, I already talked about that. Any more questions about windows? Just keep the windows you have working as well as possible, and when you really need those new windows, go get them, but don't think you're going to probably save your bill. What you hear on TV probably isn't going to happen. So. And there's that U factor, which is normal, but I just kind of think when I'm trying to help people understand, it's just kind of little things, right? Next slide. There's those heat pumps. So again, last little thing on the heat pump. I went from an 80% furnace. I use this much gas. Burn it in the furnace. Now I have this much heat out of there. I only get 80% of the heat that was in that gas because I'm using the heat that's embedded in the fuel. If you have electric resistant heater, like your electric oven, electric space heater, a plenum heater, it's just electrons getting that element hot. That's all that is. And it does it really efficiently, but only 1-to-1, 99% efficient essentially. Once you take that heat pump, this outdoor unit, absorbs heat, and it does it all the way down, to 0. It does it at 20 degrees. You're getting 2-3 times more heat energy than the electrical energy you put in, and it just brings it into your house. So all of a sudden, it's the only technology you can just sort of flip that on its head. Normally, you're only getting the heat out of the fuel itself. With a heat pump, you're just transferring heat from outside to inside. And your air conditioner does the same thing from inside to out. So if anybody tells you that it's like, oh, advanced technology, it's crazy, it doesn't work in Minnesota, all those kind of things, it does. And historically, ground source heat pumps, has anybody heard of ground source heat pumps? All that is, so we are using an air source, just pulling air by here. Ground source is just using coils into the ground, different ways to do it, and size appropriately, those things. An air source heat pump will take care of probably 60% of your heat here in Minnesota. Maybe a little more if you're lucky, maybe a little less, depending. The ground source, the big advantage there, it can do 100%. But ground source can be pretty expensive. So we've been kind of really talking a lot of air source because it's more of an incremental cost over an air conditioner. This is like another $1,000, $1,500, kind of depend on your vendor. But it's certainly kind of more in people's price range. Where ground source it's an undertaking and is a great technology, but it's an undertaking and those details need to be watched. Any questions on any of that stuff? But I do think, if you can think like, oh man, how do you, all of a sudden you get twice as much heat out as the energy in, double, triple. Pretty cool. It's actually really cool on pools too, because now you're using a heater, on a 60-degree day, and they pull tons of heat out of 60-degree air. They can still pull heat out of 20-degree air. Imagine what they do at 60. Next slide. And then here's just some heat pump stuff, details that we can look up on the website, right? I don't even remember what does that even say. Cost savings, yeah. So, next slide. Gotta have a lot of slides. You can measure with that little guy, refrigerator. Next slide. Water. So one thing I would say real quick about water. So if you have a 2.5 gallon shower head and you go down to 1.5 gallon, you got teenagers. That little savings of water, saving 5 to 10 gallons of water every single shower of embedded heat energy in that water. The calculation is, you take 100-degree water, 47 going into the water, you got to raise all that temperature. There's a ton of energy savings in there, plus water savings. I mean, why not save water, right? But there's so much energy. You can save way more on your water heater cost with that shower head than and I like it a little bit more than faucet aerators and stuff, because sometimes you need to fill the sink and all those different things. But the shower head is a big one. 1.5 gallon work great. 1.8, never know the difference. Niagara is a really common one, but they're out there. 2.5 is the standard. 3.5 is the one that you held on to. He didn't want to get rid of. So there's a lot of savings there for water. And then run the spin cycle twice on your washer. Get rid of the water before you put it in the dryer, especially kind of you have that, doing the sheets and stuff like that. Get rid of that water.
Do you use spin cycle twice?
Twice, yeah. Yeah, get rid of that extra water. Yeah, because that's a lot. There's so much energy in water, way more than in air. So I mean, that's actually a pretty new trick that I learned. Next slide.
A question about the
Yes.
water heater. So 120 must be like that, a safe temperature.
Yes.
You don't have to worry about bacteria.
The 120 mark is really it's more of a scalding temperature. So especially if you have kids, you start going over 120, and the kid, doesn't pull their hand out quick enough, they can kind of burn your hand. So that's what the 120 is. Not necessarily, wouldn't be recommended like a food safe type criteria or anything like. It's just a scalding. Yeah, protection for kids, and you shouldn't need much more. I know people like what they like sometimes. That's what's going to happen. And there's just more shower heads. Next slide. Solar. Next slide. Anybody want, I mean, there's a lot to do on solar. Tonight was about energy efficiency. Solar is very available, gotten a lot cheaper, good financing. The state of Minnesota has a 1.5% requirement, and so that's why we're seeing so much out on the market. So like Excel Energy has a lot of solar to put out there, and so there's good opportunities, and you can talk to us about that if you have questions. If you have any quick ones, happy to take it. But next slide, which I think is another solar one. Yep, community, so easier than putting on your house. A lot of the co-ops had a community solar. You can kind of buy into it and get the value of solar without putting it on your house. And there's a lot of those out there. Next slide. And then great resources. And next slide. Thank you. I talked a lot. Ouch. You guys should have kicked me out of here. I'm sorry. So on a nice night too. So thank you for having me. Let us know if you have questions, and go home. Nobody walked out. That's good. Any more questions or anything? I have cards here, and yeah, thank you.